There we go. Wonderful. Good evening. This evening, I'm quite excited. We're going to chat about chapter 7. Anybody interested in chapter 7?
It's not functional there. Oh,
Some of you read ahead. Some of you a few evening, Nick. Some of you got a few questions to fire at me, hopefully this week, because it's an interesting subject. And we had Lisa and I had a discussion on the back of a training we did in Belgium. One of the chaps, you know how you be in your triads. One of the chaps in the triads, they were asking, I don't know, what does marriage mean to you? Or was there a question like that? And one of the people answered, loyalty. And the chap in the triad, she's laughing. You're laughing? I said chap. I haven't said who he was. The chap in the triad had this look of disdain. What do you mean? Right. He was absolutely disgusted at the thought that a human being would remain in a relationship just because of loyalty. And God suddenly thought, wow. He said, what of love? What of passion? What of, you know, yeah. He said, but you never said. You want them just to be loyal. And that reminded me of, you can imagine, I mean, it had such an impact on us, it made a chapter. You know what I mean? It's so fascinating because from a family rules position, how loyal are you to your family? Because it can cause you, I have to phone my mum. Oh, I haven't phoned my dad. It's been 3 days now. I'll have to phone him. Can you see what I mean? And you'll probably know people like this. They get twisted out of shape because loyalty is knocking inside their mind. So they have to conform and pick up the phone, or you know what I mean, or make that visit to show that they are loyal. And I thought it made the book. One of the clients that I didn't put in there was a case study I did with I'm not sure if it made the book, but it was a client who said after a 30-year marriage, her and her husband were getting divorced. Had got divorced and wanted to move on, but she would not move on. And they'd sold the family business, were worth millions. And it was her doctor, who's a good friend of mine. He asked me if I'd go and see what I could do to help. By this time, the lady had become an alcoholic. And she said these immortal words. She said, I would sooner he was miserable with me than see him happy with somebody else. Wow. That's what loyalty will get you. So, like, anybody fancy having a loyal relationship now? Can you see what it's like? Wow. So I shared with Andrew today. We were out hiking. So I shared with Andrew, and I said that the good news in that particular case was that about 18 months later, the lady passed away. You know, she was drunk, bashed the head coming down the stairs, and she'd gone. And it was good because it ended her suffering quite abruptly, but it also allowed the family to get on because she was demanding that allegiance, from her daughters, even though it was painful and miserable inside that family house because it was no longer a home. And some of you guys were in the trainings we did in Durham, in England. And there was a lady on the last afternoon, young lady. And it was fascinating because I would only scratch the surface, but she's a young woman whose father had left the family home so that the young woman was being brought up by her mum. Good job, mum had done, etc. But now here she was in her early 20s and dad had turned up. So she was sort of locked in and expecting me to unlock her when the jailer was her loyalty to her mum. You see what I mean? Because she deserves to be able to at least explore a relationship with her, her blood level father. But she knew that by opening that door, it would create a wedge between her and her mother. So instead, she suffers. Fascinating. The lengths that we'll go to maintain loyalty. Anyway, any questions on this evening? Timothy.
Hello. You mentioned it about your situation as well with your ex-wife. Were you in that same loyalty struggle 50 years?
That's interesting. I'd never considered, and she punished her friend in her, and she punished her friend in a relationship. I didn't really get any deeper with that, Peggy Marie. So I'll go with you on that one. No idea. It's interesting because the loyalty was an interesting one, because it makes you stick. You see what I mean? But not to speak out of turn now, personally, it was fear. I had the universe was sending so many clients to me, and they were all of a certain age and coming to the end of their lifespan in their relationships. And so there I am, and I thought, well, I was pretty safe. The house was there, the training center on the side of the house, everything was quite comfortable. And I had an attack of the you hypocrite, because I thought, well, how can I stand on the shore and encourage these others to dive into the sea, into the ocean? And then I sat with it and I thought, well, what's the difference? And I realized I was afraid. And as soon as I realized I was afraid, then I thought, well, I'm in fear. And that was time to leave. It was a very clear moment. So it wasn't out of anger, or it was time. And I was chatting again during the night about 4 o'clock this morning, because we're back this side. So my clock's a little bit upside down at the moment. So I was in a camper van in Durham last night over in the Weir Valley, and we've been hiking since the crack of dawn. And I touched on this with Andrew, and it was the whole process of letting go, if you would. How does one let go, and how do you do it in a way that you can be as honorable as you can? You know what I mean? Because there's always the other half, and the other half is always going to have their position, but then you have to be true to yourself, or you just remain in the loyalty position. And there's an awful lot of people who are in relationships not out of love, but out of loyalty. So they're just treading water, waiting for God. And if you think the chances are nowadays, from 50, you've got a good chance of at least 40 years or something. You know what I mean? That's an awful long time to be waiting for God when there's a life to live. Yeah. Interesting. So the case that I was looking at in this particular chapter was one that I found fascinating because, and I'm not sure, again, I haven't read the chapter. It's been a while since I wrote it. But what fascinated me in the chapter was the amnesia. Now, those of you who chat to me to any extent, you'll realize my favorite subject is the deletion filter. And how? Now, try and get your head around this. How does a young woman manage to have sex with her father at 22 years old or thereabouts? Yeah, she was in her 20s, still having sex with her dad and unaware of it. Now you've got to say, come on. Of course, she must have been aware. Yeah. But what would happen was it wasn't sex with her father. It wasn't sex. When the episode, would arise, she was making daddy happy, which is what she'd been doing since a child. So when she was making daddy happy, she was in a trance. You see what I mean? She was in that loop. And it was an unbroken loop. Because mum never broke the cover. And it's only as an adult that she was a mother of two. Lisa, actually, she was a client of Lisa's originally, wasn't she? Yeah. And we couldn't really list all of the problems that this young woman had because she had so many physical problems, deterioration, a hip replacement. There was so many parts of her falling apart, deteriorating. But her system was eroding owing to this trauma, this repeated traumas, years of trauma that she was consciously unaware of until, and that's why I drew the kitchen there, until that evening when her mum popped round, the kids were in bed, and her mum flew off the handle about her husband, her dad, and she said something derogative about father, about dad. When she went and then she left, didn't really go into any extra depth, just try to cover it up. Oh, it was nothing. And she left. But when the woman awoke at like 2 a.m., there was this, and all of those emotional memory images were streaming in Technicolor inside her mind. Suddenly she had all of her answers to her illness. She'd been keeping daddy happy. And you think, wow. So that's why trance or hypnosis, if you would, that's why it's so fascinating. People think you have to, turn up with a pendulum or no. All you need for trance is something new, something rapid, instant, and something that will throw your system into confusion and chaos so that your system will accept any command that you give. So that's why, because some of you get a little bit interested in hypnosis. I've been interested in hypnosis all my life, so it's kind of fascinating when I watch the bits that come out of different schools, because obviously I've managed over, I don't know, I would probably read my first hypnosis stuff when I was about 14. So I've always been fascinated in how words can influence minds, but more so when it's visual, because the hands can be moving. So you think that you're listening, but what you're actually doing is scanning at the same time. So if while I'm chatting, there's something else visually happening here, your mind takes that cue. That's why you're smiling. Well done, Nick. So if we're looking at interestingly, now the thing is, Nick smiles, but now you're all smiling. So here's the mad bit. You think, why are you smiling? You're smiling because consciously you caught what was happening. However, subconsciously you caught so much more. But what did you catch? What are you going to keep and what are you going to throw away that will serve you better tomorrow? That is now a question for your mind. It's not a question for your conscious mind. It's a question for the owner of the vehicle. Now, you might have thrown one piece that you'd like to bring back and hold on to just a little longer before you actually allow it to dissipate. But that's all up to you. So when we chat about hypnosis, what I see as hypnosis is every last piece, every bit or bit of information that's in this informational field that we have currently. And as I explained to my wonderful friend this morning, he gets hung up on time. I said, well, the biggest issue he has is he genuinely believes there was a yesterday. So as soon as you're able to let go or forego that trance of time, then life gets really, really fascinating and interesting, because there is no construct, or rather it is a construct that's handed to us. The animal kingdom doesn't buy it unless it's an animal that's owned by a human being. And that's why animals get sick. They get sick because they're sharing our domain. If you look outside of the cage, animals get on really, really well and healthy in the flow of life. But we have to accept in the 21st century, we are captive. So our mental and physical issues then are subject to the cage that we're in. Interesting. So interestingly, I'm just reading off here, there is a diagnosis of non-epileptic seizures. Oh, Joanne, interesting. It isn't epilepsy. I have a client who only has non-epileptic seizures when her husband comes home. Her previous husband commits suicide. I think I know that one. Hopefully her new husband will stay around. Well, I've got news for you. Who drove him? I've worked with some clients over the years who've managed somehow, wonderful ladies that they were, managed to have 2 or 3 marriages, and the husband had suicide. It's like, wow, what's within the makeup that finds or catches that particular chap? Interesting. Joanne, I'm sure we'll chat further on that one. I have a client and her husband has had a transplant of the kidneys. Oh, never. People kept taking the pee. His body refuses the transplant. He had 2 cats. Each cat passed away with kidney failure. Wow. Yeah. A very heuristic theme to this one then. The what I would suggest, and I mean this quite seriously, and I've done it several times over the years. There's a sweet, candy in the UK. It's a childhood candy, and I've got a pack in my pocket. I always keep a pack with me, and it's called Palmer Violet. Yeah, Palmer Violet. Now the English people are grinning now because if we know what Palmer Violet is like, Palmer Violet is very similar to Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. Yeah. So if you haven't got Palmer Violet, you will, in your country, you will have a sweet that you had when you were a kid that has a very strong scent or taste. You with me? Like a lemon fizz or something. Yeah, something that's really, yeah. So then all we do is, are you comfortable, Nick? So then all we do is we'd have the client take whatever medication they have and that particular sweet at the same time each day, same time. Yeah. Then over the course of the next 3 months, each day they take a little less medicine, but the sweet. Yeah. And what happens is, over the course of the 3-month period, the mind gets used to the effect which is associated with the sweet. So that it's already been tried and tested. That person can then be on a lemon sherbet, dab, or whatever, and maintain optimal health on the transplant. Yeah. That experiment's already been done. Yeah. So it isn't even mine. It was just a mad idea I came up with years ago, and I happened to find somebody that actually done the experiment. Yeah. And the beauty of it is you've then got them in a maintenance program with one sweet. But the reason it has to have a potent side of it is so that, so that the entire senses go, yeah. And a Palmer Violet does it really well in the UK. But I'm sure a lemon sherbet or something, whatever. Right, and now I've got 2 chats, and this is interesting. People do, I see, Palmer Violets, well done. Timothy, you said earlier that the universe sends you clients that resonate with your own situation. How does this happen? It's interesting. I'd say yes. It's nuts. If I've got a question, Timothy, about a certain aspect I'm looking into, it's like I must send that message out into the universe, because they suddenly turn up as if 3 buses in a row. You know what I mean? You're waiting and waiting, and then suddenly it's this up and. So it seems to be that way. And I think the more you can read on the topic, that the clients that come, I always see them as they've come because it's something I need to work with. You see what I mean? And it makes it far more interesting to work with them then. Because you're looking for, what are you doing here? What is it about you being here that's got something to do with me? Now, that'll really keep you interested in the session. Otherwise, if you start listening to them, it can be a long hour. Eh? So I hope that helps. Yeah. Right. So I'm desperately. Should I break into song to keep Nick awake, or is it happening? Right. And what else did I want to chat about in that chapter? And what did you think? Isn't that fantastic to think that the trance, that sleep, the fact that she could have intercourse with her. And when I said to her, I said, so you were having sex with your father? She went, it's like, what? What do you mean? I said, well, you said you're keeping daddy happy, how did you keep that? I mean, so she was having sex with her dad. But it only sort of came to the surface in the session, because it was a taboo subject. And that's the challenge with your family rules. They can prevent you because of loyalty. Now, if you're planning on having a successful career, this is where this loyalty piece came in again, right? if you're planning on a successful career, loyalty is interesting. Because you might say to yourself, you go take a coaching, and the coach will say, is it possible you have a fear of success? And your ego kicks in, and you think, yeah, that's what it is. I'm afraid of being super successful. Now, that's a very comfortable place, isn't it? Everybody likes that, yeah. But what it is, I'm just afraid of being super successful. Now, as I pointed out to my friend on our walk today, I said, what's that smell? Yeah, because obviously there was a lot of cows in the fields and sheep, but also a few little lambs today and a donkey. There was a donkey in a field as well. Interesting. So I said, is it possible that you're not afraid of success at all? Isn't it more possible that you're terrified of failure? Now, if you can accept that you may fail, it suddenly gets more interesting, because all of the EMIs around your failure will bump, 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 they all stack up. So it's easier in that moment to target them than to allow a client the fantasy that they're terrified of being successful. I mean, if you're all sitting there, and you're highly successful, sitting on your yacht or whatever, with 400 million trillion zillion in the bank account, now it's a different position to be in then to where you are today, I'll assume. Does that make sense? Whereas if you never get started because you've sold yourself this fear of being successful, yeah, but it isn't real. And until you identify the beast, it's difficult to hit the target. Does that make sense? So it's much easier getting clearer with it. And you'll find loyalty will kick in because, well, maybe not in the Netherlands or in Belgium, but in the UK, we have a saying, yeah, about not popping your head above the parapet, yeah, not getting too big for your boots. Or does that make sense? Do you probably have a similar translation at home somewhere? Yeah. So what those sayings are telling you is stay loyal to the family. So you can see where the leash comes. Oh, that's an interesting little run you did there, Mimi. So just a thought. Get you thinking, doesn't it? Stay loyal. Well, loyalty or passion. Now, there are some employees who'll go to the company, they work for the company for 25 years, and you can set your watch by them. Yeah? They're there every morning on time and they leave on time. They're very loyal. What about productivity? What about, what are they bringing? And for some organizations, the employees just bringing themselves. They're not adding, you know what I mean? And from the vice versa, they're not getting. You see what I mean? It's a two-way street here. So I just worked with a client recently, and we give her an IWAM. Some of you use the IWAMs here. So we give her an IWAM, inventory of work, attitude, motivation. Yeah, because she was extreme sick. She'd been ill for best part of 20 years. been around all the houses and protruding tummy. She's done the diets, she's done the foods, etc., etc. And she's about 30, early 30s now. So session 1, I do what I do. She has this miracle breakthrough. I can't believe it. Session 2, it's back. So I chuckled to myself. And I said, look, I'm going to send you an IWAM. I want to take it in session 3. We'll go through the IWAM. I said, because when you get chatting to her, I remember week 1 trainings, she was convinced by what she read. So I thought, I'll send her the IWAM results. And I went through them with her. So she was massively off the chart sameness. Yeah. So she's sameness. She's off the chart. So with being off the chart sameness, she was also very, very motivated by the present. Now then you say, hang on, shouldn't that be past? It should be past, but she's got a tummy problem. Why would she be focused on the present? And she needs feedback. To be good at work, she needs feedback. Yeah. So when I fed that to her, I said, well, she'd mentioned, tiny piece of story I need to tell you. When she was 8 years old, she said, it's probably got nothing to do with it. She said, but when I was 8 years old, our family used to go to a holiday chalet. And this particular holiday, they had moved chalets. She said, I was inconsolable for 3 days. I sobbed and I wept for 3 days. I thought, sameness, yeah? And sameness like a process. You see what I mean? So send her the IWAM, sure enough, tick, tick, tick. So I said, when did this really start? And she said, oh, well, I was okay after I was 8. It was when I was about 17, when I was doing my A-levels. Now, I've just told you this lady's motivators, yeah, and her drivers. 17 years old, A-levels, your life is never the same because the doorway to life is opening. Bigger decisions are coming. You know what I mean? You get those A-levels, do you go to work, do you go to university? Where are your friends? You see, because they have gone on, everybody's flying. So the change in her life at 17 was huge. And that life allergy began. So now it's gone. So it's interesting how sometimes I'll use an IWAM tool just so she's got the evidence in her hand, as opposed to Matt said. And then you can say, well, hang on, why was she so now focused? Yeah, good question, Joanne, right? So she was very now focused because as sameness, she ought to have been past focused, but she was locked. And life has been a trauma for almost 20 years, life itself. So she's trapped in the ever-present alertness of now. Kind of cool. So her system's forever scanning, scanning, scanning for change. So, and I've given her some homework, yeah, which is very simple. It's the same sort of homework I used to give for like autism or that sort of thing. And the homework is basically to identify, and I had to give a specific task, 4 times a day for at least 10 minutes. She has to identify things that are similar and things that are different and explain to herself, write it down, explain to herself how many ways things can be similar and how many ways they can be different. So all I'm doing is I'm getting her mind to exercise across those patterns. See what I mean? So, or she's written off. So just because you have the patterns doesn't mean you're trapped by them. It means you can influence them. And that's why, remember, the 4 patterns of disease, you can practice those daily and it'll shift conditions. Because the main condition people suffer from is internal dialogue, running emotional memory image, and perpetuating it. So if you get proactive, put a process in, yeah? Stop thinking about it, go do it, and keep turning up and doing it, you'll find very quickly things change for you. Chat 1 pushes button. Timothy, in situations like these, do you also look into mother role in this situation because she looked away? The mother, Timothy, open that piece up a bit for me if you wouldn't mind.
Are you talking about the dad who had sex with her daughter?
Yeah.
There was also a mother.
Yeah.
What's the loyalty and or just that not important?
Well, the important thing in this one was if we look at the chapter itself begins really well, which then explains where the mother was. And we put a quote now, which is, some people aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to their need of you. Once their needs change, so does their loyalty. Now, hopefully, we're all old enough to know exactly what that means. Yeah, I know. I've witnessed it so many times. You know, it's fascinating, human beings. So you watch how loyal they are to you. But there's a wonderful expression in the UK, and I use it quite often, which is, I give them enough rope, and they always seem to want to hang themselves. So it's wonderful to watch. You just hand them the rope and you watch, and sure enough, they hang themselves. But before they do, they appear very, very loyal. But they're only loyal to the context and the situation until they see an opportunity, and then they run. So the mother in this instance was loyal to the father over the daughter. And there's a lot of that about, yeah, but it doesn't mean necessarily mother to daughter. It can be the other way around, because there are powerful mothers and weak fathers. You know, Cinderella, a case in point. Yeah. So I wouldn't get hung up on whose role it is, but more on the loyalty. So the husband had managed, you know, because in a power position, he'd managed to manipulate the mother, and the mother put up with. So she'd been broken down so much so that she was in a your dot. We get into your dot quite a bit in this chapter, yeah? So she was in a your dot position. Your rules for me, full stop. So then, tragically, that allows for all sorts of atrocities to take place. And the mother will deny they ever happened. Nick?
Is there any difference between fear and loyalty?
Interesting. It's fascinating, isn't it, when you look like this? Because you do something. Are you loyal because you generally love being in this place, and or are you loyal until something better comes along? And if you're loyal and marking time or waiting for your opportunity to leap, well, it's an interesting thing, loyalty then, isn't it? You see what I mean? Because how many organizations today, and I can probably check globally now, there's an awful lot of organizations that are paying the minimum amount that the legal system allows them to get away with. And because there's very little difference in the salaries, people are becoming loyal, but they're not loyal because they're loyal, hand on heart. They're loyal because they can't find a better salary somewhere else. There's several organizations that I know that big employers, but the salaries are, they're minimum wage. So they've got huge amounts of staff. But the staff aren't earning enough to be able to, to get out into the world and to explore. They're literally just putting in the hours, hitting a few drinks, put in the hours, you see what I mean? So they're living really miserable lives. And you think, wow, that's what loyalty will get you every time. But you can always set your watch by them. I mean, in the military, the British military, that is, I can't speak for you other guys, but in World War I and World War II, if anybody looked a little disloyal, as in they didn't want to go over the top and be killed, yeah, they'd be shot by their officer, just point blank, dead, to encourage others to be more loyal. Fascinating. Interesting. I'd hope tonight would get you scratching your head a little. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, you could always give them a drug. Yeah. So, questions? Any questions on this evening? I was looking forward to this one. And what else did I put in that book then, since they're quiet? What did I want to?
Can you also dive into the persecutor, rescuer, victim?
The Cartman model. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That's worth diving into. So obviously the Cartman model, it's classic. Yeah. The drama triangle, in other words. So you have your persecutor, your rescuer, your victim, and all of them can be one person, by the way. Yeah. We can all take our turns around that triangle. Because one moment, since interesting, where Timothy mentioned that I didn't mention the mother. Yeah. Earlier. Yeah. Since we're recording, you can probably rewind and check. About 10 minutes ago, Timothy said, I never mentioned the mother. Now you'll notice he's chuckled to himself and he's also looking a little bit awkward. Yeah. Well done. Now, and you lot are all smiling because you know as well as I do, whatever comes out of your mouth while we're chatting usually has something to do with other stuff, right? So now he wants us to chat about the Cartman model. Yeah. So let's have a look. Is it possible, right? Just possible that, let's use Timothy for example. Just play along here. Obviously, I'm talking out my hat, but we'll play along. Let's imagine Timothy had a little bit of a persecution complex, reference his mother. I mean, let's just imagine it, right? So how could I denote that? Can you see what I'm? People say, well, Matt, how do you know? Well, it's because when people talk, I listen. Yeah. And I listen to the very point that they utter their sentence. Then I consider, what was I saying just before they spoke? And what was the area around before we spoke? So let's say it's persecutor against mum, for example. Yeah. Obviously it isn't, but just humor me. So then we can go along and say, well, Timothy can deny it. Of course you can. Yeah. And then as he attempts to deny it, he'll move to rescue her. Yeah. And he said, oh, no. Yeah. And there's times when my mum was really, really good at X, Y, and Z. And yeah, and she's good. So he rescues her. Yeah. But even as he's rescuing her, you can watch his nonverbals and his face tightens. You see that? There's a grimace there. So that's telling you that even though I'm acknowledging that there's a rescue taking place, there he looks up and checks that EMI that keeps him in his childhood mode. So there he's activating victim, right? So isn't this cool? Because we're able to demonstrate live the entire model. Now, I always urge people to stand in the center. The center is a very wonderful place to be, a difficult place to be, because from that center, the only thing, and I suppose I'm really good at that piece. If I was good at anything, I'm good at being in that center position, because it's a place without judgment. And that's where I generally developed that saying of, that's interesting. Now, if you can just be in that center position, and the only thing you utter is, that's interesting, without, that's interesting, that's interesting, but just, that's interesting, and be genuinely curious, it will prevent you from going to one of the other points on the triangle. But in order to find yourself in that center and maintain that curiosity, what happens is the EMIs are kept off and tiny, so long as you can stay in the center. If you move towards one of those edges, the EMI comes in and you get growly. And then you'll find why questions will load up automatically. That's right. Did that answer it for any? Was it anywhere near, Timothy? Cheers. Funny thing is, you know, I can do this all night. I've been practicing. So, any questions? Anything? Did that about cover the Cartman model for you? Do you get the idea? And what we're looking for are obviously the non-verbals, because if you can stay really awake to them, do you use the center when you get rattled up?
Do you ever get mad, pissed off, annoyed?
Oh, it's interesting. At least me on Mad nowadays, disappointed. I can get disappointed. Yeah, just Mad left me a long while ago because it cost a lot. Yeah, there's a lovely I'd encourage you to watch it. You might get on Netflix. It's called Tell Me Who I Am. Yeah. And I think I do reference that one in the book. It's the twins. It's really worth watching. Yeah. Because in that show, it's also a book, but you've got the twins there, Marcus and I never remember. It's crazy, right? I promise you, I never remember Marcus's twin's brother. And it's crazy. But Marcus is the protagonist. He's the main man because he's the one that lived it all and remembered it all. So I suppose in my mind, I've got an extra special place for Marcus, if that makes sense. Because his brother had the 18 years eradicated because of a motorcycle accident. But when you see them face to face or next to each other, Marcus is clearly an older brother because he's carried the trauma, he's carried the with him. And then you can see the lines of cortisol in his face. So it's fascinating then because he's had all the cortisol firing, and you see what I mean? So when you say, do you get rattled? As Marcus with all of those EMIs firing. But his brother not. So I suppose I've really gone to great lengths to exorcise the demons. You see what I mean? So and really discovering where I'm at. Because this, make no bones, this entire life is all about you. That's all it can be. You know, if you can grasp that, it does really start to make it a bit easier for you. It's not about them. It can only be about how you view them and how you view what they're doing from where you're at. Hence, I get a lot more disappointed in human beings. It's mad, and I think bless, because unless you are loyal, yeah.
Doesn't it get frightening as well though, knowing that it's in the end all about you?
Frightening. That's a see, you chose your emotion. What about exciting? You see, you went to fear. I went to infinite possibilities. Oops, there you see what is it? Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the choice in the next moment is always going to be down to you. And people say, oh, but what if a guy comes in and he puts a gun against your head? Now what are you going to do? Well, again, I've actually had that. I had a guy had a shotgun on the end of my nose many years ago, demanding money. And I still remember smiling at him down the barrel. And I said, well, the problem is I haven't got any money. I said, and I think what I need to do is what's best for both of us. So because if you blow that trigger, obviously I'll be dead. I said, but you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. I said, and I think you're probably a really good guy behind that. So I'm going to step inside and I'm going to shut the door, and that's going to let you get on with the rest of your life. And I came inside and I closed the door. And I walked into the living room, and my then wife looked at me and she said, you look like you've seen a ghost. I said, you will not believe what just happened. Ah, such is life. So I had choices. I could have gone, oh, you just deal with the tiger when it comes. You see what I mean? Choices, man. And you can always have a choice to make a really cool impression in the next moment. Fascinating. So I noticed there's a few pens moving tonight. I must have been on form. Any questions? 5 to 8. More water, please.
Matt, I asked a question about how can you test for true loyalty versus someone who's being forced into a loyal position or can't find a better alternative?
How can once more, Mimi? How can you
test for true loyalty
Oh,
versus someone who is being forced into a loyal position or can't find a better alternative?
interesting, eh? Well, what about, right? Testing for true loyalty, I wouldn't bother. Yeah. You could spend an awful long time doing that, couldn't you? Yeah. There are some people that they get in a relationship and then they start doing nasty things to their partner just to see if the partner will leave. Oh, yes, way, Nick. Yeah. Yeah. There's some people who get in a relationship and they're that size, and then they become the size of an elephant just to see if their partner will leave them. Way. Yeah, fascinating, right? So they're all tests, yeah? But why bother? Why not turn up with the best version of you? And if they stick around and you're still having fun and they're still having fun, yeah? There's a wonderful book title, I'm okay, you're okay, yeah? If they stick around and you stick around and neither one of you are fastened to, the bedpost, kitchen sink, whatever, or you have no legal requirement to be together, then let it roll. You see, one of the challenges is, what if you're together and you have 20 fantastic years? Well, you have 20 fantastic years together, yeah? And then, time to move on, just things change. Where's the tragedy? Can you see what I mean? Where's the tragedy? What if your mum and dad got together for 4 years and it was 4 amazing years, and after that they fell apart and never spoke to each other again, but for 4 years it was good? Yeah. Wow, well done. But what about those who stay together until death? They stay together until one of them dies, Joanne. And only then are they released from 55 years of loyalty. I mean, there was a movie years ago called 12 Years a Slave. Now, 12 years, is that all? Is that all? Yeah. There are some people, they have their 60th wedding anniversary. What the 60th wedding anniversary, And it's 60 years, 58 years a slave. Wow. I think I probably told you I worked with a couple of years ago. I mean, they were like up in their 80s or something. And they came to see me to help them get a divorce. I said, I'm a hypnotist. How can I help you get a divorce? And they said, well, we decided we'd stay together for the children. And our son died earlier this year. And I said, well, why are you getting a divorce then? I said, surely, if you hang around another year or so, God will sort it for one of you. Yeah, because they're just very old. They start to laugh. I said, you don't have to keep your word because you said it. I said, you could just agree to continue if you wished. And they said, oh, we never thought about that. It's crazy, isn't it? When you you give your word, you commit to X, and then you think, well, that's it. I've said it now. I've got to spend the rest of my life doing it. No, you haven't. Thank you for this week. 55 years, Joanne. Wow. Have a good one, gang. And I'll message in there and we'll do chapter 8 next time. Yeah. Bye-bye.